The single dad fixed an old man's broken Ferrari on the highway. The next morning, a CEO called him. The red Ferrari sat motionless on the side of the highway like a wounded animal worth more money than Ethan Carter would probably earn in 10 years. Cars rushed past without slowing down. Drivers glanced at the expensive sports car and the elderly man standing beside it, then continued on their way. But one old pickup truck pulled over. That single decision would change Ethan's life forever. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness still matters, that good people deserve second chances, and that one small act can change a life, please take a moment to like this video, comment below, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Moments Hub for more emotional and inspiring stories. Ethan Carter was 38 years old, exhausted, and carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Ever since losing his wife 5 years earlier, he had been raising his 8-year-old daughter Lily alone. Every morning started before sunrise. Every night ended long after most people had gone to bed. Between running a small repair garage and trying to be both father and mother to his little girl, there was rarely a moment when he wasn't worried about something. Bills were piling up. His garage was struggling. Several larger repair shops had opened nearby, taking away many of his customers. Some weeks Ethan barely earned enough to keep the lights on. Yet despite everything, he never allowed bitterness to take root inside him. He believed that if he kept working hard and stayed honest, somehow life would eventually reward him. On that particular afternoon, Ethan was driving home after completing a small repair job in a neighboring town. His pickup truck rattled along the highway as he thought about overdue payments, school expenses, and whether he could afford Lily's upcoming birthday celebration. The little girl never asked for much, but Ethan wanted desperately to give her a childhood filled with happy memories. That was when he noticed the Ferrari. The luxury car looked completely out of place beside the highway barrier. Standing next to it was an elderly man in a gray polo shirt, staring helplessly into the open engine compartment. Several expensive cars passed by without stopping. Some drivers even slowed down briefly before speeding away again. Ethan glanced in his rearview mirror. Part of him wanted to keep driving. He was tired. He needed to get home. There was dinner to prepare and homework to help with. But another part of him couldn't ignore the sight of someone stranded and alone. A few seconds later, he pulled onto the shoulder and parked behind the Ferrari. The older man looked surprised as Ethan approached. There was something dignified about him, something calm and composed despite his obvious frustration. Ethan introduced himself and offered assistance. The man explained that the car had suddenly lost power before coming to a complete stop. He had already called for roadside service, but the estimated wait time was several hours. Ethan examined the engine carefully. Unlike many mechanics, he possessed an unusual gift. He didn't simply replace parts until a problem disappeared. He listened. He observed. He understood machines in a way that seemed almost instinctive. After several minutes of inspection, Ethan began noticing details that others might have overlooked. A small component had failed, creating a chain reaction that prevented the engine from functioning properly. The repair wasn't easy, especially without a full workshop, but it wasn't impossible either. The older man watched silently as Ethan worked. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. Traffic continued rushing by. The afternoon sun drifted lower in the sky. Finally, Ethan tightened one last connection and stepped back. The engine roared to life. The sound echoed across the highway. The elderly man's face transformed instantly. Relief, surprise, and genuine admiration appeared all at once. He looked at Ethan as though he couldn't quite believe what had happened. Many mechanics had likely worked on vehicles like this Ferrari before. But few would have diagnosed the issue so quickly under such difficult conditions. The older man offered to pay him generously. Ethan politely accepted only a reasonable amount. The man seemed puzzled. Most people would have taken advantage of the situation. Some might have demanded hundreds or even thousands of dollars. But Ethan simply smiled and explained that helping someone didn't require taking everything from them. For a brief moment, the elderly man studied him carefully. Then he thanked Ethan sincerely and drove away. The encounter seemed finished. Just another day. Just another repair. At least that was what Ethan believed. That evening, he returned home to Lily. She greeted him with the enthusiastic hug that somehow made every difficult day feel worthwhile. Together they prepared a simple dinner. They talked about school projects, favorite books, and the stray cat that frequently visited their backyard. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table reviewing bills. The numbers didn't look good. Rent. Utilities. Insurance. School expenses. Equipment repairs. Every piece of paper seemed to carry another financial burden. For the first time in months, Ethan wondered whether he would be forced to close the garage. The thought terrified him. The garage wasn't just a business. It was everything he had left. It was his ability to provide for Lily. It was the promise he had made to himself after his wife's passing, that no matter how difficult life became, he would keep moving forward. Exhausted, he eventually went to bed. The next morning began like any other. Or so he thought. Ethan arrived at the garage shortly after sunrise. He unlocked the front door and started preparing for another slow day. Then his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Normally he ignored unknown callers because they were often sales representatives or automated messages. Something made him answer anyway. Within seconds, his expression changed. A professional voice informed him that someone wished to speak with him regarding yesterday's roadside assistance. Ethan frowned in confusion. Roadside assistance? What roadside assistance? Then the voice mentioned the Ferrari. Suddenly, he remembered the elderly man. A few moments later, another voice came on the line. It belonged to the same man whose car had broken down on the highway. But this time, there was something different. Something significant. The elderly man introduced himself fully. His name was Richard Harrison. And he was the CEO of one of the largest automotive technology companies in the country. Ethan nearly dropped the phone. His heart pounded. He stood frozen in the middle of the garage as the reality slowly settled over him. The man he had helped yesterday wasn't simply a stranded traveler. He was a billionaire business leader known throughout the industry. And Richard Harrison had not forgotten him. In fact, he had spent the entire evening thinking about the mechanic who refused to exploit a vulnerable situation. The mechanic who solved a problem others couldn't. The mechanic who chose honesty when greed would have been easier. What Richard said next would change Ethan's future forever.